Well, thanks for coming back for another live stream of Here We Are. Yes, stand on guard. Thank you so much for joining me today. We had some problems yesterday. We acknowledge those, but so did everybody on the internet. And, get a lot of helpful advice from a lot of folks out there, and we take that helpful advice very seriously. I think it's very important. And we will continue to take that helpful advice. But however, a lot of folks were affected by this yesterday, and I can prove that. Like while I was listening to you and you were hearing like every fourth word numbed out, I was hearing myself talk back. Literally, I was hearing double what I was saying. And I've heard this from a lot of other people this week. I got an email yesterday or a text message from my good friend at Redacted, Clayton Maurice, who said that they had never had a more difficult week. So a lot of people were affected by this. And if you think, by the way, think about this for a second, folks. We are on the verge of a nuclear war in not just Ukraine and Russia, but in the Middle East right now. So if you think our internet's not going to fail for hours at a time, days at a time, think again. I encourage you all to think. I was in the military for over 12 years. I saw people die in front of me. I probably shouldn't say that on YouTube. I saw atrocities when I was in the former Yugoslavia. That's real. What's happening in Gaza is real. What's happening in Israel is real. What's happening in Iran is real. So stop trying to pretend the world is all about what you see on your internet station every day. It's not. There's another world out there, and believe me, we are cascading towards a nuclear war. And I am sick to death of people telling me that, I understand how this works better than you. No, you don't, actually. No, you don't. Now, let's get to some real news here. Prime Minister Carney is set to meet with U.S. President Trump tomorrow. Why? Well, President Trump is at the G7. The G7 conference in Kananaskis, just outside of Banff, Alberta, one of my favorite places in the whole world. I was actually married in Banff. I loved Banff. I love the place. My mother and father met there. I love Banff. I love Kananaskis. I love everything about it. However, what's going on right now in Kananaskis is completely contrary to good sense and good policy. And believe me, this is Mark Carney's first big test in the world stage in Politico. They love him in Politico. And I used to write for Politico. They love Mark Carney in Politico because this guy is a grandstander. He is the preeminent globalist as a world leader today. And does Donald Trump take him seriously or not? I have no idea. I don't care. Here is Donald Trump yesterday doing a huge production number to the U.S. military, which I think is great. I love the U.S. Army. I don't love the U.S. Army on steroids on $1 trillion because that's stupid. No peacetime army needs that much money. And I've got to show you this. Here's the two clowns, the biggest clowns at the Kananaskis conference. You might recognize the guy on the left there. That's our Prime Minister, Mark Carney. The guy on the right is somebody who somehow secured a knighthood as Sir Keir Starmer. Ever run the UK government. because he's been putting people in jail for what they say on the internet. He calls them internet warriors. He hates them. And this is what we're facing this week in Canada. So the story goes on. My good friend Jeffrey Rath, you heard him on here last week. A lot of people complained about that broadcast. A lot of people said I was a little too over the top. I was a little too foul-mouthed at times. I'm sorry. If that's how you feel, I got a lot of people coming back the next day saying the exact opposite. Don't worry about these woke people. And I won't. But Jeff Rath is up there talking about real truth. And I got to put these silly glasses on to read this. I just watched hundreds of police shutting down on-ramps onto Deerfoot Trail. That's the highway number 2. If you've never been to Calgary, and if you're going north-south, if you're in Calgary and you're trying to get to Airdrie, you take the number 2. Or you take the number 2 to Kananaskis. So what is he saying here? That the number 2 was backing off traffic for miles or so. A convoy of 5 VIP SUVs and police escort caravan could escort them unimpeded by any pesky peasant traffic. This is my good friend Jeff Rath saying this on X today. It's the physical manifestation of Canada, Jeff says. Tens of thousands of Albertans impeded by fewer than a handful of arrogant, entitled globalists. Jeff, thanks for putting that in. And Jeff will be on the show, by the way, next week again to talk about the Alberta Prosperity Project's economic plan. Because we had him on last week. He shared that with us. We're going to dissect that and find out what it really means for Alberta and Canada. Thank you, Jeff, for posting that today. Because, my God, you are right on track with that. All right, what else do we have here? Odessa Orvich, another great friend of the show. Now, she is saying, yeah, secret meeting, meaning they can't bring their cell phones into certain meetings, no recording. And the rooms are swept for recording bugs. And everyone is sworn to secrecy in those meetings. What's she talking about? The cabinet meeting? No, the Bilderberg is meeting in Europe right now. And guess who's there? Oh, I love it. I just love it. We're going to get this in a second. I'll show you this now. I'll show you the rest later. Who else is in the Bilderberg meeting? Well, none other than Vinegar Man Champaigne, the finance minister of Canada, and the former finance minister, Chrystia Freeland. Let's watch this.
In Ottawa are some of the most powerful and influential people in the world. Mark Carney, our new Prime Minister, is also a Bilderberger. Bilderberg Group, an informal and off-the-record conference for political and business elites in a forum that would allow for candid and frank discussions without the fear of being quoted or recorded. Thus, the meetings are held in secret and are by invitation only. For almost 60 years, the Bilderberg Group has been meeting behind closed doors in luxury hotels around the world to discuss in secret their plan for global control of world events and markets. The members of the Bilderberg Group have such an influence over the media that until recent years, their name and existence has been quietly kept from the general public through a veritable media blackout. With the advent of new social media tools and advances in technology, the Bilderberg Group is now finding it almost impossible to stay out of the spotlight and hide their powerful cabal from the public.
Welcome to Liberty Talk. I'm Odessa Orlowitz. I already have Dan right here with us because we have 20 minutes because he is in Stockholm at Bilderberg. And I'm so excited that you made this time for me, Dan. We want to quickly show a clip of you confronting Peter Thiel, and then you will tell my audience who he is, why it matters. And at Bilderberg, they're actually talking about depopulation. So I am basically letting my audience know who you are and why they should go follow you while you're at Bilderberg, because it's really exciting that you're there. Let's just quickly show this clip.
Mr. Teal, do you have any comments about Palantir's surveillance of the American people, sir? Or any of your connections to Jeffrey Epstein? I think people are rather concerned about that last particular one. You're setting up a Big Brother surveillance system, and people know it, sir. Do you think the American people want this surveillance tech being used against them? Any comments at all on the Epstein connections? You were meeting with them.
Doesn't have a lot to say, does he? None of these people can even give a decent response to a question from anybody they don't approve of already. I made that come out properly. But this is exactly what these people are about. And let's get back to this great interview, with
People are waking up to what you're doing there, sir. That's why we're here covering this. Wow, Peter Thiel was booking it. That man picked up the pace. The second the word Epstein came out, it seemed he started getting a little faster. But stone cold Peter Thiel. Of course, co-founded Palantir with Alex Karp, who is still here. And these are the guys who are setting up the Big Brother surveillance system, essentially to track.
Yeah, once again, a fantastic interview with one of the friends of the station. Thank you so much, Ms. Orlowitz. We'll have you on again soon. Just love the work you're doing, because this is what the station should be about, folks. It's not about, and once again, I'll say this again. I should have said this at the beginning of the program. I do this show live. I do it live because we get people on here, and it gives me a chance not to censor what they're saying or what censor I'm saying. Well, I like live television. It was great for news. It was great for what they used to put on as entertainment as well. And that's why I do live TV. The energy level is way up here. If I record shows, the energy level is way down here. Yeah, once in a while we have some technical problems. Deal with it. I'm sorry. You have to. I deal with it. You have to deal with it too. Because I'm not going back to what I used to do, which is mainstream media recorded, and mainstream media as the mainstream media and the mainstream politicians wanted it. This is why I give you something different here. And I'm not going to go back to stale news clips that everybody else wants to resurrect. That's BS. That's not news. That's not my original journalism. That's somebody else's original journalism. And you'll never get that crap here week after week. You'll get original content. That's what the story's about. And anyway, I had to say that. But what's going on with the Bilderberg Society? Well, they're meeting at the same time as the K7 is meeting, as all of these industrial and Russia used to be a member of that. Remember, it used to be the K8, but they kicked Russia out because they need an enemy to fight. They need somebody who's just so bad, because we have to spend trillions of dollars on national defense to fight Russia. That's the plan here. And it's the same old BS that's been going on for centuries with war. Let's listen to this interesting question that came up last week in the House of Commons.
Is the Minister of Finance going to be using taxpayer dollars to travel out of the country this week?
Mr. Speaker, first of all, I'm happy to say hello to my colleague. He was my critic when I was a young man, Mr. Speaker, when I started in this House, and now I see that 10 years after, I still have the pleasure to have to answer his question. He comes from a great region. My dad lives next to his.
Agro West.
Is the Minister of Financing planning on traveling to the Bilderberg meetings this week using taxpayer dollars?
The Honourable Minister.
I'm very proud to answer questions from my colleague. Like I said, he comes from a great region where my family is also, so I've seen him in action, and it's great to see that they can.
For Niagara West.
I just want to ask the Finance Minister why he believes that he should spend time at the Bilderberg meetings rather than actually tabling a budget.
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm so glad to see my colleague is actually following, paying so much attention about what I do. I travel to Shawinigan also every weekend, Mr. Speaker, and I would be glad to invite him at home as well because he seems to be very interested where I'm going.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where you're going too, because this is a guy who is clearly
Covering the Bilderberg conference for
is clearly in the pocket of the globalists. And somebody asked me when I was showing the last section on the Bilderberg Society, isn't Chrystia Freeland going there too? Well, how about that? Yeah, she is. Let's watch this.
So Chrystia Freeland just popped out. She ducked back behind the shade there once she noticed all the cameras. And here is Chrystia Freeland making her getaway. There she is. She just got into that car there. Absolute proof Chrystia Freeland was here. If anybody wants to argue that, I have the proof. I doubt it'll be on her official itinerary. We'll see.
All right, so we already know that Chrystia Freeland is an acolyte of the World Economic Forum. She's been there from the inception of this group. She has been a guest speaker several times. She's sat with Klaus Schwab and been interviewed. She loves the World Economic Forum. And isn't it interesting that Champaigne, Francois Philippe Champaigne, the new finance minister, is also going to the Bilderberg Group. And he's also a leading acolyte of the World Economic Forum, just as Mark Carney is. Do we see a connection here? Is there anything going on here that maybe we should be concerned about? Of course there is, because believe me, Mark Carney is a globalist. Mark Carney wants to see you enslaved. He's already got the bills in front of the House of Commons to do that. He's got Bill C2, he's got Bill C5, which we now know is not just about removing interprovincial trade barriers. It's about removing provincial autonomy. Now, I had the Premier of Alberta on this show last week, and she said, ain't going to happen. We're going to fight that. We're going to stop that. We're going to make sure that Mark Carney, as a Liberal Prime Minister of Canada, is never going to take away provincial autonomy over natural resources. I hope so. But what if he overrules the Constitution? Well, there's been other, shall we say, dictators in history who have done exactly that. They've taken over the government. They've taken over the parliament. This is what happened in 1933 by a certain German dictator. He took over every party in the Reichstag that agreed with him and outlawed the parties he didn't agree with. So he had a majority overnight. And then he signed the Enabling Act. The Enabling Act, you say, what's that? That was the legal mechanism for the German government to take away all rights in society. No more freedom of speech, no more freedom of assembly, no more freedom of the press and media. It was gone overnight. And that's what Mark Carney could do to Canada. I can't say this often or enough. Beware of what's going on here. And what's happening in Kananaskis this week is very much a part of that program. So, I want to show you this. The Canadian
or
connection.
information which is too often propaganda. Your compliance is vital to the agenda. To impose global solutions, the leadership needs you to believe in global problems. The financial kingpins have long seen themselves as masters of the universe, manipulating global affairs through institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Is Agenda 2030 the defining act for complete control? And how significant was the global response? One might ask why the UN needs a multi-billionaire finance and media player as a special envoy, or why Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, who called for a new global monetary system, is the UN's special envoy for climate action and finance. And then there's Larry Fink, the boss of BlackRock, the world's largest asset management company. He's a board member of the World Economic Forum, and as we'll see, has driven the UN's goals through investment strategies for the past 20 years. All three are principles of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, a partnership with the UN. With the green economy worth trillions to corporations and investors alike, it's hard not to see a conflict of interests. Are the bankers raising money to achieve United Nations goals, or are the goals a Trojan horse to change the world's financial control systems? Now consider the events at Jackson Hole, Wyoming in August 2019, only 3 months before the COVID outbreak. It's when Mark Carney delivered his call for change, and BlackRock proposed a new financial mechanism, Going Direct, which in principle allows central banks to channel capital direct to large corporations.
Say, are we catching this? This is the Mark Carney that existed prior to him being the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada and prior to him being Prime Minister of Canada. This is the same Mark Carney. He has been lobbying, fighting for this kind of legislation his entire life. He wants the world globalists to take over independent countries.
How we came to the point where we think that we're going to prevent bad weather from happening by eliminating fossil fuels is just about the most nonsensical, illogical thing that I can imagine. And the whole world is caught up in this nonsense.
So how did the carbon story take hold? Meet the man who invented climate change, according to The Telegraph. His name? Maurice Strong.
Okay, I encourage you to watch this entire documentary. The information and how you can access it is available below in the description. Maurice Strong, you're saying, haven't I heard that name before? Yeah, he was the joker that Pierre Trudeau appointed to the United Nations as our climate change representative. Where did Maurice Strong die a couple of years ago? In China. And at that point, he was in control of billions of dollars of Chinese capital and was actually producing Chinese cars. That's where Maurice Strong left the world, because Maurice Strong was never really that concerned about climate change. He was never concerned about the environment. He was concerned about making Maurice Strong rich. And that's what these people, these SOBs, are all about. They're all about making themselves richer and richer and richer on the backs of the people that they completely consume. And you know who those people are? You and I. And that's what these people are up to. They've been doing it for decades now. And to tell you the truth, they've been doing it for centuries. This is what the world has always been about. The elites impoverishing and absolutely punishing the people below them. And that's what's been going on for a long, long time. So I want to tell you, I will be back tomorrow. And when I come back, I want to show this to you because it's really, really important. But I want to show this to you here. Okay, I want to show you this clip here from the Rebel News, one of my favorite stations. Ezra Levant, who has been publishing Rebel News courageously now for almost a decade or more. I have to remember, I think it's actually been more than a decade. He will be on the show on Tuesday to discuss Bill C-2 and Kananaskis. I can't afford to somebody to Kananaskis. I can't afford to go to Kananaskis. I got to keep doing the journalism I do here just to stay afoot. So, and by the way, anybody who thinks I can hire 2 or 3 more producers tomorrow to make everything perfect at this station is dreaming in Technicolor. I don't have that kind of money. I rely on you people for your support and anything you can do to help this station continue to thrive. So I had to mention that. We will have Ezra Levant on the show next week to discuss these 2 issues, and as well as the producer of that clip I just showed you. So I hope nobody left here because this is fantastic.
Carney's Foreign Affairs Department had no justification at all for keeping our reporters out. And unlike Trudeau's Debates Commission, who tried to ban us twice, this time they didn't even try to come up with a justification. They just refused to accredit us. No reason given. But that just doesn't cut it when you're the government violating freedom of the press. It doesn't work that way. So I knew we had a good chance, given that the Federal Court of Canada has already twice slapped down the Liberals for trying to block our journalists. But you never know what's going to happen in court. You never know what judge you're going to get. There's always a human factor, a risk. So I was still a bit nervous. My main concern was this: could the justice system move fast enough? Trials often take years. We were asking the federal court to have an emergency hearing the next day at 9:30 a.m. and to give us their ruling that same night. That's faster than 99.9% of all court cases. And I think that's what Carney's lawyers thought would save them. They knew that they were violating our rights, but if we couldn't get our day in court until after the G7 was done, then they would win by default, you see? It all came down to the federal court. Could they find us a judge and a courtroom quickly enough? Well, yes, they did. Now, we didn't hear that until the night. And surprise, surprise, it was only after the court said they could jam us in. That's when Carney's lawyers called us up and said they weren't going to fight back. They were going to surrender and back down and let us in. I think their lawyers knew that if they fought us in court, they would absolutely be shredded by the judge, given that the federal court has already ruled twice in our favor. They simply were hoping to be saved by a too busy court schedule, but they weren't, so they caved in.
So that's how Ezra and Rebel News got invited to be regular media folk at Kananaskis. Because it drives me crazy. This is happening in Alberta's backyard. And somebody once it said today on X, I read it someplace and I haven't got it, but they're saying, isn't it ironic that the Kananaskis, they're meeting in the province that might actually separate within the next 12 months? Isn't that ironic? Because this could be the last G7 conference ever. And the last G7 conference meeting in Alberta. The poetic justice here is incredible. But Ezra will have his folks there. Ezra will be on the show about 10:30 on Tuesday morning. I'm going to talk about the news of the day. And by the way, I'm watching the news of the day. I know what's happening in Israel, what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Iran, how this war in the Middle East could become a regional conflict. And if there's anybody out there who thinks this is a good idea, who thinks, oh, thank God Israel's finally given it to those Iranians. Friends, folks, countrymen, this could erupt into a nuclear war so quickly. Israel has nukes. They've had them since the mid-60s. We all know that. They could use conventional nuclear arms. And that sounds like, oh, that's so safe, eh? No, that's like a nuclear cannon against sites in Iran. You think Iran's going to take that without any kickback? Well, they might, because Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons. Israel keeps insisting they're on the verge, on their doorstep of it, and they've said so like 85 times over the last 10 years. I have no idea if Iran is close to developing a nuclear bomb. Donald Trump keeps saying on Monday they are, on Tuesday they aren't. So I don't know. I know Israel has nuclear weapons, and I know they could start a nuclear war in the Middle East because it won't be Iran striking back. It could be Russia and China striking back. And we could all be in that valley of Megiddo, which the book of Revelation, without an S, talks about. This could lead to Armageddon. And I tell you, I'm sitting here in Ottawa watching this day by day and wondering where the hell this is going. Because I don't know anymore. I just know we are on the precipice of catastrophe, whether it's Mark Carney economically in Canada or whether it's a world war that will indeed destroy the global planet we know right now. I'll be back again tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching today. It's always a pleasure to be with you. In Canada. Thank you, producer, for that. These are the clowns who are meeting in Kananaskis, Alberta right now. Mark Carney and Sir Keir Starmer, or as I like to call him, Herr Keir Starmer, because he talks more like a German from the government of the 1930s than he does like a Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, or anybody who believes in something called free speech. Thanks for watching today, folks. We love you. We'll be back again tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and it's going to be an exciting week of interviews and original journalism. Thank you.